Okay, Lindsay, thank you very much for taking the time to come on today. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm great. We were talking about how we're on different sides of the world right now, but you apparently have the hottest day
Yeah,
that basically England's ever seen.
yeah.
And over here it's supposed to be summertime, but it's like freezing and rainy. It literally feels like it's like October or November type weather right now. So yeah.
Well, before we get into it, I'm going to ask a few warm-up questions. The first of which being, do you prefer running fast or lifting heavy?
Running fast. Sorry.
Yeah.
I know that's probably a polarizing answer on this podcast.
Okay, what is the best book you've ever read?
Oh, Harry Potter, whole series.
Really?
I love Harry Potter. I'm a huge fan. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've read the whole series at this point either, but I think it's really cool to watch her writing style develop as the books progress, and then also
Yeah.
when it all kind of comes together at the end, just to see basically how far as an author she was able to look ahead. Like even in book one, there's references to things that happen in the very last book, and it's just I don't know, her writing is just incredible. And I know people are like, oh, it's a children's book, but I disagree. She's an exceptional author.
And do you prefer the books or the movies?
Books for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, well, speaking of weather, do you prefer summer or winter?
Uh, that's tough. Probably summer, but we have it's fun winters here too where I live. We have good snow, so if you know how to do winter sports, then you can have a lot of fun with winter too.
Yeah, I'm super jealous of the weather in Canada purely because it's like you get the best seasons. Like when it's winter, it's you do it
Hmm.
properly. You get snow. For us, it's like
Yeah,
2 days, and then it's like turns to slush the next day, and then you can wait
yeah.
another year. And like on days like today, you get guilt if you don't enjoy it because it's like, well,
Yeah.
so soon.
37's a little hot to be outside. If I were you, I'd be like, okay, 30
Yeah,
minutes outside, and then I'm gonna hole up in the air conditioning.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Final question. What three things in life make you the happiest?
Probably friends and family. I'll count that as one.
Yeah.
Hobbies. And I guess a good life balance
Mhm.
between, yeah, just a good life balance in general.
Awesome, great answers. So, for people who don't know who you are, could you just provide a little explanation about what it is you do?
Yeah, so my name's Lindsay. Hi. I do mainly obstacle course racing, which is really funny for a lot of, I guess, countries outside of the US to recognize as a
Mhm.
professional sport. But in the United States, it's I guess, Spartans and Tough Mudders and things like that, but they're really competitive. So even though I'm Canadian, most of my races are in the United States, and we have a series that we compete in. Competition level is really high. There's quite good prize money and good sponsorship opportunities. So I make my main living off of that. But then this year, most of my races actually I've been focusing on sky running,
Yeah.
which I think Europeans would be a lot more familiar with, because here it's people don't really know what it is. But yeah, so I've been competing in the Sky Running World Series. So I've got to actually go overseas, I think 4 times this year.
Yeah, and
And
not
one
just
more coming.
competing in skyrunning, you've been excelling. You've been doing amazingly.
Thank
It's so
you.
cool to watch. What is
It's
skyrunning for people who wouldn't know?
Yeah, essentially it's basically like trail running, but so you go up and down quite big mountains, in
Mm.
the Alps and stuff, and then they send you on all sorts of crazy terrain once you're on the top of these mountains, along ridges, some easy via ferrata type stuff. There's even a few races where a helmet is mandatory. So racers have to wear a helmet. And yeah, and you just got really amazing views. Typically the races are anywhere from 25 to probably 60 kilometers, I
Mm.
would say. So I tend to pick what sky runners call shorter ones, which are, I guess, anywhere from 3.5 to 6 hours, which to me is exceptionally still quite long. But I think in the running world, that's quite short to a lot of athletes.
Mm.
Yeah.
For
yeah,
me, that's just, I can't get my head around competing for that length of time. I mean, my races growing up were like 1 minute, at most 2 minutes, and that's it.
Yeah, because you're swimming, so of course, like,
But
yeah.
it's at a much different intensity, I guess.
Yeah. And also, like, I feel like for your races, you probably got so nervous because it's like if you screw up one thing within that 1 minute, then it affects the whole race. Whereas, like, when your race is a bit longer, there's a little bit of room for error, which is like, I literally, like, one race had to stop and take my shoes off and empty out a whole bunch of rocks and stuff and then, like, tie them back up. And probably cost me like 3 or 4 minutes, but it wasn't, there's like enough time to kind of make that back to a certain extent. So a little less nerve-wracking.
So as a child, can you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up? Because obstacle course racer and sky runner doesn't seem like an obvious answer for most children.
No, not at all. When I was really little, I wanted to be a vet. And then, so I actually studied in university for like filmmaking and photography and kind of graphic design. And then I ended up working in marketing for like several years. Eventually ended up in like the event planning world, but like doing marketing for event companies, which it was really fun because I was like a little bit less time. I mean, obviously now I'm a professional athlete, so I can't sit still. So the desk job life was like really not suited for me. I enjoyed working in events because like there was, desk time during the week, but the weekends you were like always on the field on your feet, which I really enjoyed, but never expected to become a full-time athlete. Actually, my sister went to the Olympics twice, and for cross country skiing.
That's cool.
So she was in Whistler and Sochi, but I would like, even in high school, I was watching her work her butt off towards like these crazy goals that she had. And I was like, not for me. I just want to be a normal person. And then like, I think maybe once I was a little older, a little more mature, I kind of like found my groove and probably found the right sport and like found myself here, which still a little unexpected, but yeah.
So how did you come across OCR?
My husband got me into it actually. So at the time, I was working in marketing and basically like mountain bike racing at a pretty high level, but not like professionally. And then he started doing obstacle course races just because he thought they looked fun and he was doing quite well in them. But yeah, like I mentioned that there was quite good prize money. So basically he would like go to a race and then he would typically like make the podium. So he would like use the prize money to kind of like go to the next one and save whatever he didn't spend on travel. And I ended up not seeing a lot of him because we both worked during the week and then on the weekends he was always gone. So like basically he convinced me to fly. He was like, I'll fly you out to this race so that we can like hang out together and see each other, but you have to like train for it. I think he had a hunch probably that I'd be good at it. So he flew me out there. I trained hard for it, ended up winning. And then I was on the same trajectory he was, where I just kind of like, him and I would just like use our prize money to like fly ourselves together to the next races and stuff. But eventually quit my job because I couldn't like, I don't know, it was hard to work in eventing when like there's events on weekends, and then I was always, wanting to do races and stuff too. So I kind of ended up having to pick one. Yeah.
It seems like in the last 5 years, OCR has like really taken off and become a lot more popular. And I think a lot of it's down to people like you and Ryan, and you're now making a living through doing OCR races. But for the typical 9-to-5 worker, why do you think it's so attractive?
I mean, even before I started doing it, like even before Ryan started, taking me off to races and stuff, I would do it with like my colleagues at work. We did a couple of races together on weekends, and I think it's just like I guess the barrier to entry is pretty low. Like most people have a pair of running shoes somewhere. There's different distances, so like whatever you feel you're capable of. There's going to be a distance of race, whether it be like 5K or 15K or even 3K. They even have Ninja Warrior style ones that are like 100 meters. So like there's something out there for everybody, and it is like a fun way to spend a weekend with friends and stuff. And all you really need is that pair of running shoes. So like outside of, I guess, the pretty steep actually race entry fee, it's not like you need an expensive carbon bicycle or like a whole gym full of lifting equipment or anything. Like it's yeah, you can just kind of like sign up and go do it. So yeah.
I think as well, a lot of people are like actively seeking discomfort because, you know, now life's pretty comfortable, you know, Wi-Fi.
That's a good,
nice.
I like that point actually. I've never heard anybody put it that way, but
and
that's
like
really
I mean,
interesting.
you get to run through mud, you might get through a few rips on your hands, you get to like get push past other people, and it's like controlled suffering, which I think some people really crave when 9 to 5 is so comfortable.
Yeah, I think you end up coming back to it too, because it's a sport where there's like always so many ways to improve. Yeah, there's just so many different elements to it where you're like, oh, you know, I could be better at that. And then you kind of train hard and you want to come back and do another one and see if, you know, you can make it through all the obstacles, or like you can run through the whole course and not have to walk, or like, yeah, there's always something for people to work on.
Yeah, so as a professional, how do you go about training for an OCR race? I mean, I guess there's a lot of running, especially at the longer distances, but how do you train for the obstacles if you don't have them in your gym or gardens, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, actually that was my biggest weakness for sure when I first started obstacle racing. Like if we fail an obstacle, for a lot of races, the penalty is to do burpees. And I remember like the first race that I finished, I did something like 200 burpees and I ended up with like tendonitis in my elbows back here just from like pushing myself up the ground so many times. So yeah, like what did I basically started increasing strength by doing more chin-ups, more farmer's carries, what else? Yeah, like dead hangs, that sort of thing. And then like bouldering or rock climbing can help a lot too. And so we started spending a lot more time in like rock climbing gyms, which is a really fun kind of way to cross train. And CrossFitters actually have like really good grip strength too. So a lot of the, I find like after, if I do any CrossFit style workouts too, like that, holding that, I guess, barbell can help a lot too. Just with developing grip strength. Yeah.
And so at the elite level, are the races standardized in that you're doing the same obstacles, or is it different each time?
That's tough. I guess it depends on the race series. So there's so many different brands in the sport. Like there's Savage Race or Tough Mudder or Spartan Race. So per race, you're going to get the same obstacles every single time. But then at our World Championships, it's called OCR World Championships, and the guy who runs that race does a really cool job of like basically bringing all the brands together. So like all the brands have an opportunity to like bring one of their obstacles to our World Championships and like showcase it. So everybody typically picks their coolest obstacle or their hardest obstacle, or the one that's like the most mentally challenging for people to overcome. So that's really fun because you never know at that race like which ones you're going to get from all the different brands. And we train really hard for that race because you don't know what you're going to get, and also because there's so many grip strength obstacles, you're just like absolutely smashed by the time you get to the finish line.
Have you ever done a high rocks race?
Kind of. Have we done? No, I guess we've done Deca Fit at the Spartan Games event. So you and I previously were talking about this crazy event I did called the Spartan Games, which people can look up on YouTube.
And you won it on the first year, which is so cool.
The first year, I did win it. And then the second year, Lauren Weeks won it, and she does a lot of CrossFit. And then second place went to Corinna Kaufman, who she also does like a ton of CrossFit. So but I haven't actually done a full high rocks before. I was training for one once, and I swear to God, from like practicing wall balls, I put on like 5 pounds of butt muscle and like in like a month. But then we ended up not being able to go because of COVID, and the whole thing got kind of canceled. And
Yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't actually fly there from Canada. Like getting it across the
Mhm.
border was too much of an issue. So yeah, but
Yeah.
I'd like to do one.
Yeah, what I like about it is that it's standardized, so you can measure your progress and you know what's coming. So you know what to train for, the sled pushes, farmers carries, wall balls, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to suit hybrid athletes quite well. Like you obviously have to be quite strong, but you don't have to be like as strong probably as a CrossFitter, but you do need like still a pretty good cardiovascular engine.
Yeah.
So I feel like if I put a lot of focus into it, then I could probably do well at it. But yeah, I don't know. Lauren, I think, holds the the world record right now.
Yeah.
Lauren Weeks, that girl who won the Spartan Games, and I don't know if I'd be able to beat her ever because she she comes pretty close to me actually in like fast running events. Like she's quite talented in the cardio realm, but then also she's so strong. So like maybe, I don't know, maybe if I spent like 4 years focusing on CrossFit, then then I could do it. But
So
yeah.
the Spartan Games, it was multiple events, and I thought that was really cool because, to be honest, I thought that Sam Briggs would have won it easily because it seemed like closest to CrossFit as opposed to like OCR, because there was such a variety of events. So how do you train for something like that? Did you get
Well, yeah,
warning?
it's no, so we got some warning. I think everybody knew like it was only 2 weeks before the event, or like maximum a month. I think that some people found out, but we didn't get a lot of warning. And then they also only told us I forget how many events there were. I think we had, I don't know, do you know? I should know this. I think it was like 12 events over 4 days or something. We'll call it that. So we'd be competing like multiple times in a day, but we only knew what like half the events were going to be. So you could only prepare to a certain extent. And I will say, like, depending on what events they choose, it'll suit people differently. So actually, I think Sam would have probably done better had she competed in 2021, because they had a lot of like these events. They all felt a little similar actually in 2021. Like they were short, like VO2 max style events, and they mostly had some kind of weight element added. So like even for like a run portion of event, it's like they wanted us to do it with a weight vest on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas 2020, like she would crush the strength events, but then we had all these other events that was like we had a 4-hour mountain bike race, and then there was a trail marathon, which like we were out there running for like 6 hours or something like that. So it was a lot more like endurance based that year, which played to my strengths. So
the mountain biking event was so good to watch. I think it was Faith, and she was on the mountain, she falls off.
She was so positive. She's such a cool person.
Yeah, because she was a massive power output athlete, and she fell off the mountain bike and she was like, right, okay, let's get back. Yeah. This is so positive.
So positive. Everybody that was there that year was just like an exceptional human being. And like even Kurt, he was like so smashed by the final days that he could barely walk or move, and he just had a big smile on his face still, like just such a positive, cool person. So yeah, it was a really cool way to meet people and just like be introduced to athletes from different worlds, because we were laughing before we started recording that before the event I didn't actually know who Sam Briggs was. Which in hindsight it's like a bit embarrassing.
But I guess it's a good thing though, because you can be authentic around her.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly.
So as an athlete, something that I think about a lot is that your income essentially is determined by your body's ability to perform, which I guess puts you in a precarious position, in the sense that if I broke my leg, I'd obviously be in pain. I'd have to take a few days off work, but then I could hobble around, coach clients quite awkwardly. But for you'd have to take, a full year off competing. Is that something that you think about as a professional athlete, or do you just try and do what you can, limit and try and prevent injuries and get around it that way?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like obviously it's always in the back of my mind. Like I love mountain biking, but I'm really afraid to like really challenge my technical skills in a mountain bike, because I'm like, what if I fall and get injured? So
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, I'll still go mountain biking, but it does hold me back from like really pushing my limits. 2020 was a fun year because like we knew we weren't racing, so my like skills developed quite a bit that year. But I think when I initially quit my job, that was probably the scariest bit, because I went from having like a salary and just like a regular stable income to living off prize money, and I didn't have sponsors at the time. So that was a really scary move to make. Don't regret it, that's for sure. But now like I do have sponsors, so if I were to get injured tomorrow, then at least I'd still, it's like a yearly contract, so at least I'd still have them. And depending on the length of my injury, like maybe if it was a really long one, they would be like, yeah, we're not going to re-sign you for next year. But most of my sponsors actually I've been with for quite a long time at this point, so they're like my kind of second families.
That's awesome.
Which is really, yeah, it's really nice not to like feel that kind of pressure from them.
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty lucky in that way.
And speaking of injuries, you did a race in Lake Tahoe, if I'm not wrong, and you finished the race with a stress fracture in your foot. Could you talk about what happened before that race, and then how you dealt with going into a race knowing that you were at a physical disadvantage because you were injured before going into it?
Yeah, wow, you did your research. That's awesome. Appreciate it. But yeah, that was a huge, like definitely really tough mentally. And like I'm still glad I did it, but I would for sure say it was like the most stressful race that I've ever won. Or run, sorry. I didn't win it. But we do work with like a sports psychologist essentially, and he actually lives in England as well. And he's awesome, but he could attest to the fact that I was definitely like a bit of a mental wreck before that race. And your headspace, I think, has a lot to do with what you're capable of. But so basically I had like got this stress fracture at a previous Spartan race that I'd done. I don't remember where exactly in the course, but like I was neck and neck with a top competitor of mine, and I just remember it like hurting a lot after the race. And then I flew home and didn't really like run for a couple days as I was recovering and stuff, and then started running again. I like felt it, and it really was a couple more weeks of me just thinking it was like some muscular thing. But then it got to the point where like I couldn't walk properly and I was hobbling around and stuff, and then I had it looked at. And I've never actually had a serious injury before, and even still that's the only one. So I'm pretty lucky, because a lot of runners have a lot of injuries. Yeah. Not good. Yeah. And so I was surprised when I learned that it was a stress fracture. But by the time the race that you're talking about rolled around, I had been recovering from it for a month already. So like my doctors and physio and everything deemed it okay for me to run on. They were like, it's definitely not going to like re-break or anything at this point. But it does, I don't know, it's just hard when you know you have an injury to like run really fast and hard on a downhill. Like as normally I would just like kind of send it on the downhill without, any fear. But like knowing that you have a fracture in your foot that's still healing, like really held me back a lot, I think. Even when you know that like you should be able to run on it, it's just like in the back of your mind. So and then leading into the event, I had done all my basically training on a bike instead. So like then you're always thinking, oh, like I haven't trained like normal, how's that going to affect me? And because I hadn't done it before, like I really didn't know. And coming into like the biggest race of the year, essentially, like it was World Championships that I ran with the stress fracture. Normally I would just sit out the race, but because it was the World Championships, I was like, oh, if they clear me to race, then I'm gonna race. So but yeah, I mean, got through it. It was a massive learning experience for sure. But yeah, really stressful time.
You mentioned that you have a sports performance coach. What is that? How does that person support you? Is it a case of giving you advice on how to get through tough training sessions and tough competitions, or is it more for you to reflect on why you're doing what you're doing, if that makes sense?
it would be like, I guess, whatever I'm struggling with at the time. So a lot of people, it can be just like lack of motivation.
Yeah.
And he'll kind of like help us through times like that. One of the coolest exercises. So now I only talk to him really like on an as needs basis. But when I first started working with him, we would talk like regularly once a month or so. And he did a lot of cool exercises with me. So I'm quite a visual learner. So he made me basically draw out this like mind map where I wrote down all the things that essentially could like go wrong in a race that would make me really nervous. And then we put little circles around each one of them. And then like off of the little circle, we draw like an offshoot with another little circle about like if this thing happened during my race, like what I would do
Yeah.
to deal with that. So like basically it was like, here's everything that can go wrong. And here's what I would do in the situation of like if it did happen in a race. And going through that exercise is really cool because at that point I was probably like already 4 or 5 years into my professional career. And it made me realize that like pretty much anything that could go wrong in a race had already happened to me at some point during my career. And I just like dealt with it just fine. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Phelps used to, so he was famous for the butterfly, and he used to count his strokes and come up with the average from when he would dive into the wall. So if his goggles filled up with water, it's fine because he knows where he is. He knows, okay, I've got 20 strokes to do,
Oh,
15, because in swimming it's like, especially in a 100-meter race, it's all about the touch and who can get there first. So he knew that his
yeah.
final stroke was timed, so it would touch the wall.
That's incredible.
And his goggles filled up in London 2012. So
No way.
yeah. So it wasn't just, a cautious thing to do. It's
Yeah.
that he relied
Would you like swim with your eyes open if that happens still, or can you just like you're moving too fast? There's no
on.
way.
I guess it depends on if you've got an event coming up, because like it would help vision wise, but the chlorine in your eyes is going to make your eyes really sore and might give you a headache. So
Yeah.
yes, during the race I'd be weighing up like, okay, do I have something next? So
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know, it's so interesting to hear about like athletes just performing at their craft, because obviously like to me that's a really cool novel idea, but to him it's like he spends all day every day in a pool, so like of course he would know
Yeah.
something like that. So
And Matt Fraser,
yeah.
when he retired, he spoke about, all the 1% things he did just to try and push him that little bit further to, excellence. And he like refused to use a knife, like a steak knife, in case like he ripped his thumb and therefore couldn't wrap it around the barbell, just in case.
No way.
Just in case.
Wow.
Like, and then obviously you wouldn't be able to grip the bars or the rigs. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting.
That is really interesting. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like I feel like athletes train their body so hard, but the mental side of it is 50% of things. So like to work with a mental sports performance coach is like, I think it's a really cool thing, and it's becoming quite common now. Like most professional athletes have a mental coach as well. So yeah, so I feel like it's an interesting development in sport, because I don't know if 10 years ago people did work with mental coaches, or maybe they just didn't talk about it as openly. So yeah.
So when you're training, how do you get through horrible grueling sessions? Are you thinking about the race, or are you thinking about your greater purpose and why you started this in the first place?
I think about, I guess, consistency. I feel like in performance, like consistency in your training is key. And I think, yeah, I mean, we're all bound to have like some horrible days when either you don't feel good or you don't want to go out. But and granted, there are days when, I'll like take a rest day that I hadn't planned on, or I'll move sessions around. So like if I had intervals that I wanted to do that day and I wake up and I'm like feeling really tired and I do my warm up and I'm still not feeling good, then I'll just move them to like maybe I'll feel better the next day. So I'll swap things around. But then there's other days where you just kind of like have to push through it, or you just feel average, or like for whatever reason you have to do it on that day. Yeah, and those are the days when I'm just like, yeah, it's like a consistency in your training is, I guess, what pays off in the long term.
Mm.
For sure, you can like skip sessions, but you can't do it too regularly
Yeah.
because then it will like affect performance. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
you just kind of got to push through it, I guess. Yeah.
For me, like training is something that I do for fun because I love the feeling of accomplishment after a hard session, and I like the variety, and I'm aware of the benefits it gives me. But when you're paid to be an athlete, does it ever take the joy away from training from you? Like when I think about reading, for example, as a child, I loved reading, but then the second I'm told, okay, Phoebe, you have to read this book and then write an essay on it, I don't want to do it at all. So is
Yeah.
it something for you when you're told, okay, I have to do this to make a living? Does it become less
Well,
fun?
nobody wants to read Shakespeare. Well, I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
there's some people out there, but it's always like, the books that you have to read in
Yeah.
school typically aren't very good. I was worried about that actually when I worked full time and like sports were my hobby. And I was kind of concerned that it would like take a lot of the joy out of it. But I don't think that it has. It's actually like with additional fitness, it just allows you to like be able to do even cooler things. So I am motivated by my races and like success and performances and stuff, but I think a huge part of what motivates me is just like having the fitness to be able to go on some really cool, I guess, adventures and stuff. I love being out in the mountains and like just seeing kind of how far like my body can take me in all these cool places that you wouldn't be able to get by like a car, or really anywhere unless you're like on feet or maybe a bike. So like yeah, so I think that I wouldn't say it's taken away from the joy of it at all. There has been like events that I've had to push through training for that I'm like not that stoked about. And that's when you kind of have to find like ulterior sources of motivation, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a well-known gym owner in the UK called Ollie Marchon, and he's got a saying, train anything, ready for anything. And I really like that. Train everything, ready for anything.
Yeah.
Because it's like you don't know what life's going to throw at you, and it's good to be prepared. And even I want to be able to run a 5K on the weekend with my friends, if they suggest it, or want to be able to carry my shopping bags upstairs easier. I just want to make life easier for myself, and that's why I keep training.
Totally. It's so awesome to feel like just a capable human. And I think my sport lends so well to it. And just, to like feeling like a strong individual. And then also just, I'd say it's so much easier to train for and like be motivated to do my training on the daily basis, because obstacle racing, like there's so many different things that you can do to train. I think the thing is like with a sport like cycling, you're literally on the bike all day, every day, and it would just be so repetitive. But with obstacle racing, it's like, you can do a strength session or train your grip strength. Like I could go do CrossFit if I wanted to, or I can go mountain biking, and that's going to benefit my cardio or my ability to like read fast downhill lines through the forest, like that, I'm going to be shredding down on foot in a race, or like go do hill intervals, or like there's just, the opportunities for like training sessions are pretty endless. So it's a really fun sport to train for, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, even with my personal training clients, I always just say to them, like, mix it up. Variety is the key to longevity. If you hate spin classes but feel like that's going to be the thing that's going to make you lose weight, don't do it. Like, you don't have to hate exercise. It's not a punishment, it's an opportunity to improve. So that could look like playing tennis with friends, going for a long dog walk, running on the treadmill for a little bit, doing deadlift, anything that can move the needle slightly, and something you can look at will be the most beneficial for you.
And I also find if you're enjoying it too, then like you'll be so much more successful at reaching your goals. There's been a study about that actually, where like if you're pushing towards a goal like weight loss, but I just use that as an example because you brought that up. But if you're like, following all the rules and doing what you've maybe historically done that's been successful for you, but you're like not motivated, then I think I don't know, I forget what the statistic was, but it actually does take like a lot longer to actually reach that goal. But when your mind's kind of motivated, it tends to happen a lot faster. So cool
So
study.
to finish off, I want to ask you, if you were going to give advice to someone who wanted to start running or potentially OCR racing, what would you give to them? What would you tell them to do?
Yeah, I think just start within like where your comfort zone is, because it's not going to like all come together and happen overnight. Like if I look back at the start of my career and like where how much growth I had to go through to get where I am now, it's like astronomical. So don't go register for an elite race. It's like your first race. That's going to be like just end up being really miserable and uncomfortable. Like do something that you're going to enjoy, do the race, and then look back and be like, oh, look back at where you have room for growth, something that you found hard during the race, and like work on your weaknesses and on certain days, and then other days just like enjoy doing the training that you enjoy doing to keep yourself motivated, and just like work your way up slowly. Yeah, that's my
Amazing.
advice.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you
it's
very
pretty
much.
it's pretty obvious, but
I really appreciate your time. Thank you again.
yeah, thanks for having me.